I'm going to tell you what is so key. It's just so key because, you know, I'm Rachel Zane, and I'm going to slap them up, slap them tight, and slap them all over again. Welcome to the broadcast, everybody. It was only yesterday I was asking, where is Archetypes? It's been 5 months since the announcement, and today it landed. So that was very timely, wasn't it? You know, I never thought I'd ever spend an hour of my life listening to a Meghan Markle podcast, but I've just done that. I happened to be about at the moment it was released, so I spent the next hour listening to it, jotting down all my notes, and so I'm here at the time of recording. It was only released an hour ago. I don't know what the rest of the world's saying about it, but I'm here to offer my opinion to you. But this will be a slightly different broadcast to usual because I'm coming to you raw, as they say, and I'm not going to be able to go through editing it. So it's more for those of you who just want to have a thorough look at what was said, my reaction to a lot of the priceless pieces in this podcast, which I found very revealing and very confirming of aspects of Meghan's character, psychologically speaking. Very revealing, very fascinating. There's quite a lot to unpick. Well, it felt like a lot. Maybe I'll whiz through it in 10 minutes. We'll see how it goes. But yes, so it's really for those of you who want to maybe grab a cup of tea first of all, my dears, or a bowl of fruit, and sit down and pick over your fruit with me for a little while and have a conversation. You know, background noise, but there's not going to be editing. There'll be paper rustling and gaps and all kinds of lunacy, my dear. So it is what it is. Take it or leave it. But I know that some of you will appreciate me doing this. So that's what I'm going to do. So the first episode, the misconception of ambition. Every episode of this podcast is to cover a different word. And by the way, I'm ever so sorry if it's a copywritten word, if I'm not now allowed anymore to utter the word archetypes, because didn't she apply to patent it or copyright it? You know, belongs to the Markles now, doesn't it? So, whoopsie-daisy. Hope it passes the censors. But yes, this week it's ambition. And this week it features Serena Williams, her bestie, because of course, she can't pull in the punters on her own, can she? And guess who else makes an appearance? Harry. Of course he does. Of course she has to rely on pulling him out the closet, and she pulls quite a few royal-related things out of the closet to get the headlines in, because she won't be enough, and even lovely Serena won't be enough. Next week, by the way, her guest is a sweet, sweet fantasy baby, Mariah Carey. She announced that at the end of this week's podcast. So all those names are queuing up for for Meghan. Do you really think they'd all be queuing up if she wasn't acquainted with royalty? No, we know that they wouldn't, because she was a third-rate actress on Suits. Anyway, moving on. Before she even sits down with Serena, before she even sits down with the gal, there's a little preamble, and guess what she pulls out the bag? Guess what story that we might have all heard once or twice before, and which a few characters, including her own father, have suggested might be a fabrication, an exaggeration, a magnification of Meghan's prowess. I wouldn't like to say, but that's what lots of other people have suggested that were intimately involved at the time of the Ivory Clear washing up advert. Yes, she actually goes there. Again, how many times is she going to pull this out the bag? How many times is this story going to get an airing? We know that you are such a genius that you, along with 30 other classmates, wrote a letter. According to Tom Bower, you know, you didn't receive all these hallowed replies, and the commercial was not changed because of your intimation and your demands that the commercial changed to a more feminist version. We all know that that story is highly contested in many quarters, but not to Meghan. She proudly wheels it out again for another airing. The whole style of the thing is very much like this, and there's lots of dramatic pauses, and she really wants to bring you into her conspiratorial girl gang, and it's all like, we're going to have a cozy catch-up. And let me tell you about a time when I was so fabulous. And, you know, it's all this kind of like, let's settle down for girl gang whispers. And it'll delight a tiny crowd out there, because there are a lot of losers out there, and they will feel, oh, Meghan's our bestie, she really cares about us, she loves us, so, you know the kind of loonies that she's going to attract. Who she won't attract are any true, mature, inquiring adults, because that doesn't seem to be what she's about at all. She is a permanent actress, so phony and so fake throughout the whole thing. It is there as an illustration for the whole world to see. It's really, you really got to have your blinkers on if you watch this episode and all the ones that are to come without seeing exactly through her veneer. It's really interesting to have this segment that long, because she begins on her own and then having this chit chat with Serena. Everything is turned around to make it all about her all the way through. And I did actually begin listening with an open mind. Well, I listened with an open mind throughout the whole thing. I didn't just want to do a hatchet job on her. You know that is not my style. I defend her more than many of you actually like. And I'll defend her here by saying it's not the worst show in the world. But it is pretty pants. It's pretty pants. I would give it a 1 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10. And that's me being really rather generous. At least I didn't give her a 0. I wouldn't say it's a 0. A 1 or 2 out of 10 perhaps. But that's the tone throughout the whole thing. And there's little bits of jaunty music playing in the background. This is a sort of technical trick that any producer will do, because they know that the actual words aren't riveting enough. They know that what she's droning on about won't capture the audience and keep them there. So they put this jaunty music, sort of childlike music in the background with the occasional burst of I Am Woman. Of course. She drones on again, this story about Ivory Clear. She probably thought the name of the washing up liquid was racist too, didn't she? Why can't they call it Ebony Clear? Why does it have to be Ivory? Anyway. As far as we know, she didn't object to the name. But she said, did I just hear that guy? He said that washing up was just women instead of just people. And now she says the two boys next to her said, yeah, that's where women belong, in the kitchen. This is when she was in 11th grade. Do you really believe that? That some boy said it? Or do we think that was a figment of her imagination? I get the feeling a lot of her objections are sort of tropes and stereotypes that she's heard about what people think about women and their place, not actually her experience, because I don't imagine that her school chums said such a thing, but I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they did. Maybe they were these sexist young boys that she was hanging around with in her school of privilege. I went on a letter-writing campaign, she says, and she repeated how she sent all these letters off to Hillary and Linda Ellaby and all this kind of thing, and the soap manufacturer. And would you believe it, she says, 3 months later, a new version of the ad appears all across the country. And she takes credit for that entire thing, that entire event, even though there's no record. And it seems to have been denied all over the place that change had absolutely nothing to do with her whatsoever. But she still claims surprise. Knowing how contested it is, I think she actually relishes the controversy. She actually relishes her own reputation as an alleged liar. I learned that my small action could have a ripple effect far beyond me. My 11-year-old voice also got a little confident, she says. Maybe a little louder. She's constantly putting references to Megxit throughout this whole thing. This whole podcast series is her opportunity to address in her shady, passive-aggressive way Megxit and the slating of the royals and her journey. That is all it is about, in my opinion, after listening to this podcast. That is all it is about. This is her right to reply. And she's relishing it. Every opportunity. There's going to be 12 episodes of this, by the way. She says she wants to explore, words that are so disparaging against women, like diva. Well, Every woman I ever call a diva are ones that I adore and admire and cherish. Diva, crazy, the B word, or slut. That's a great word, isn't it? Well, maybe some of these people who get called these kind of names are those kind of things, my dear. Maybe they are. Maybe people have got a point. She wants to understand why these words came into usage. Maybe it's because there are some divas out there, my dear Meghan, and some crazies, and some bitches, and some sluts. Maybe that's why they came into usage. Doesn't mean everybody gets it right all the time. Doesn't mean that decades ago, or centuries ago perhaps, they were a little overused unfairly in the direction of women. But in Western society, in 2022, I'm not saying that society's perfect. I'm not saying that slurs aren't used in a wrong fashion here and there, but so what? That's the world. Do we really expect everybody to be absolutely immaculate all the time? Fair enough, you want to explore it, you get to explore it. She thinks herself such a philosopher during this whole podcast. Some kind of pseudo-intellectual. You seriously think that her middle name's Aristotle or something, my dears? You seriously think that Atlas is up there shrugging, looking down on this Markelina and thinking, oh, I've got some competition there because she is one of the great thinkers. Look at the way she pores over these words. Ambition. Let's try and find out where it comes from. Or why it's hurled as... Why do they hurl the word ambition, she wants to know. Women. Women in particular. Black women in particular, she says. Who does this? Who hurls these names at these women in these day and age? Do you know? I don't know. I mean, humans insult each other from time to time. That's what they do. I experienced that myself. And I'm not the same demographic as she. And of course, she says, with a little fake giggle, I know a thing or two about these labels myself. Basically, her whole point is that these 12 women that she's going to have on the show, you know, they've all been labelled with various words, ambition, blah, 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 blah. But in every circumstance, she's got to bring it back to herself, because I've been there. I've been there. I'm a princess of the United Kingdom. And, you know, I've faced more disparagement from the British press and the British people than anyone. I've known all the names. I know. I understand. a little more than most people. And then she introduces Serena Williams, my dear, dear friend, the greatest of all time. Like, honestly, I'm not exaggerating this for effect. She is so syrupy through the whole thing. Now, I'm a great lover of yoga. I've been on a lot of yoga retreats, and some of my dearest chums come from those worlds. So, including from some of the American, well, I'll just say from the Hamptons, put it that way, from the yoga world. But there is a certain type of sunny, let's say Californian, and you know the type. And I happen to have a lot of Californian fruities in my audience, so I am not disparaging you all, my dear. You're wonderful. But there's a certain type, we know the type, you know, clutching their green shakes or whatever it is, my dear, trawling around with their yoga mat. Who's so syrupy the whole time. Everything's so wonderful. My dear, dear friend, it's so wonderful to see you. And oh my God, you just make my day. And now I'm going to talk all about myself. Well, that's how she is through the whole thing. And you get the impression that she is totally one-dimensional. There's nothing else to her but this sunshine, apart from probably thunder behind the scenes, but who knows. I want to talk about that dirty word, ambition. Who says it's dirty? Who says it's dirty? You know, when I think about ambition, you know, the likes of Joan Collins turned all of this around in the 1980s. The likes of Madonna turned this around in 1990, blonde ambition. It was something to be admired. It's never been told to me as something to feel disgraceful about or to disparage women. Oh, look at that woman who's ambitious, isn't she awful? Have you ever heard of it? I mean, she's coming out with stuff that is dead meat. I mean, this is archaic attitude she's hauling back up again for examination. The voiceover style she does in this Sunny thing is actually a bit like, it sounds like Carrie Bradshaw, who I love. I love Sex and the City, but it's like a bad impression where it's like, hey girls, we're gonna talk over. You know, it's like we're at the TIG again. The TIG is live. And, you know, come in. I will share my time with you. And I'm going to pour you my favorite wine. Tiggy, tiggy, tiggy. Pour you my favorite wine. We're going to have a little cozy catch up. And we're going to get real about the world. Because people out there don't understand our feelings matter. And words matter. And we've been through it. You know... Now, this was another segment where I found my eyebrow going into spasms and hoisting up with a little raise when she spoke about her time at the all-girls Catholic school in Los Angeles, the Immaculate Heart, which we've all learned about before, haven't we, my dears? She seemed to suggest that this is where the nuggets of her own rebellious feminist instincts kicked in, my dear. Because in the 1960s, the order of nuns at that school wanted to make changes. They were fed up with the patriarchy, she says. I wonder if that includes God and the Jesus that they're praying to. They're fed up with the They didn't want to wear their habit anymore. Why did they become a nun then? Begs the question, doesn't it? I mean, that's what it's all about, isn't it? They wanted to keep up with modern times. But when the conservative cardinal, she says, how does she know he was conservative? This was the 1960s. When the conservative cardinal, you know, she has to make this distinction, doesn't she? Does she think that all the nuns were Democrats or non-conservative? Don't get your knickers in a twist. I love Dems and cons. I don't care what party you vote for. Just be a good person. But, you know, she seems to be insinuating that the nuns would have been one of her, you know, as if they were burning their bras just because they didn't want to wear their habits anymore, according to her. But the conservative cardinal of the diocese found out, and he was not interested in this plan, and the church wouldn't accept that the changes the nuns wanted. So they renounced their vows so they could live their lives authentically and comfortably and on the terms that made sense to them. So she seems to point out this is where she got this rock star spirit, because all these events she talks about mirror what happened with the royal family. She wanted change because she never really wanted in the first place, did she? Can you imagine joining a nunnery and then saying, sorry, I don't like wearing a nun's habit. I'm not that keen on praying to God because he's a bloke. You know, this is so patriarchal and it's so oppressive. Can you blame the conservative cardinal for saying, on your bike, love, go find a new religion or someplace? Well, the nuns weren't having any of it, and Meghan says she wasn't having any. Well, she insinuates that it's the same as her. She wasn't having anything of the old guard, even though she was the one that flew into their nest. She was the magpie that saw the jewels and flew into the royal nest. They didn't force her in there, my dear. So she makes that, she has the temerity to make that comparison to the cardinal. And no, she says, this didn't mean that they lost their faith or their commitment to social justice. She has them down as social justice warriors, these poor nuns, using their name in vain. You know, whose side do you think the nuns would be on? Meghan's or old Queenie? I would hedge my bets. What it meant was that they started their own community called Archewell. That's basically what she's saying in my eyes. She says they were not beholden to this system, this patriarchy that they weren't comfortable with. She said that the nuns then moulded their school in their new image. Is that what you wanted to do with the royal family, my dear? Buckingham Palace, Markle Palace. Theologically driven, as it always was, she says, but now feminist. This feminist ideology trickled down into every aspect of my education and life. Feminism is the thing that she hangs all of her behavior on as an excuse. Do you get that, my dears? She uses feminism, and she disgraces the feminists that came before her, the real feminists. She disgraces their memory and their legacy by hanging onto their achievements, her despicable behaviours. It's because I'm a feminist. I've got to mould the world in my new image, the new improved version, the Markle version. Not! So she says, I never felt the negative connotation of the word ambition. Well, none of us did, dear. None of us did. Most of us are cognizant enough to realise the fact that just like you can have the good happy pride of a chef brandishing his first souffle from the oven, you can also have a possessive, ugly pride. And it's the same with ambition. Most of us know that you can have blonde ambition, as Madonna does, and perhaps a little of me. Or you can have ruthless ambition, or greedy ambition, or sexy ambition. You know, most of us understand that there's nuance and that a word can shift and change with the addition of another word next to it. Stupid girl. But she never felt the negative connotation of the word ambition until she met my now husband. Oh yes, she brings him into the fold. Where apparently, and she does like a sarcastic snigger, where apparently ambition is a terrible, terrible thing. No, Rachel! No one was criticising your fucking ambition. No one cared about your drive, about your spirit, about how feminist you are, about how black you are. No one gave a flying fuck. Nobody. All they wanted you to be was decent to this nation who supported you, and decent to the royal family who welcomed you. All they wanted was for you to not get in the ear of a prince that was once beloved by this nation and cart him off overseas at the first opportunity. Ambition had fuck all to do with it. Don't put your spin, and she talks about that later, controlling the narrative. Don't put your spin on what people are angry about, my dear. Because I'm here to tell the world exactly what people are angry at. Do you understand? Me and people like me aren't afraid to tell the world. Very passive-aggressive she is through the whole thing. Very passive-aggressive. She introduces Serena Williams. Now, I don't know much about Serena Williams. Of course I know Venus and Serena. That's all I know. As I've said to you before, I don't watch sport of any kind. I mean, the occasional gymnastics, I like trampolining, I like a bit of swimming, some of the more gentle, I say gentle, but you know. Watching rugby can be quite fun, you know, if the right team's playing. But, you know, I don't follow it, I don't know anything about tennis, so it's no shade to Serena Williams. It's the first time I've really heard her in conversation, and she came across very nicely. I think I'd have a much better time with her. She's a bit more chill, she sounds lovely, but she does sound like she's been infused a bit too long in this LA sunshine. You know, she is affected by all of that. And it's made very clear throughout the whole thing that Serena adores Meghan, so she says, you know, she holds them in very high favour, and Meghan with Serena, so, you know, that must be mentioned. After she lists Serena's accomplishments, she says she's accomplished all of this in the midst of a culture that, how shall I say this, doesn't exactly prize ambitious women, let alone ambitious black women. Well, I don't want to speak on black women's behalf, particularly in America. All I can say is, growing up here in the kingdom, I haven't particularly noticed all this disparagement against ambitious women, and nor of the black women in my friendship group and circle and family who came up. I'm not speaking for every single one of them, but the vast majority who I speak to were never held back, were never torn down for showing any signs of ambition. I mean, isn't it just generally accepted that most people have a bit of ambition? I mean, what is a human without any modicum of ambition whatsoever? Just some kind of flaccid avatar. I mean, you don't meet many of them, do you? And they are the ones that would normally be disparaged. Most people with a bit of get up and go and ambition will succeed in some way, shape or form, and most people are attracted to a bit of that drive as well. So I really want to know, who are these people that are What did she say? Not exactly prizing ambitious women or ambitious black women. Baloney! You're talking shite. And it's at this point that guess who strolls in and joins the party? Harry. Harry joins the chat. He just pops in for 2 seconds, but she just had to keep that in the edit to show to the world that, you know, they're also au fait with each other. It's just like one big happy family. And to pull the views in. She has to get him in there, doesn't she? He pops in really casually, and Serena, she does a sort of English impression. They all go, hello, 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 hello. It's obviously a bit of a novelty to them, you know. Let's all, because we're around Harry, let's all be English. Hello, hello, hello. Very funny. And Harry says, oh, this is so cringe, my dears. He says to Serena, I love what you've done with your hair. It's a great vibe. Where's my fan when I need it? I love what you've done with your hair, Serena. It's a great vibe. Oh, how cringe. How absolutely cringe. She was like, oh, thank you. Oh, I love what you've done. She says, thank you. Good to see you as always. She goes, I miss you guys. And Harry says, well, come and see us. So they can't have been getting together that regularly in person, can they? I will, she says. Serena says. And Harry says, have fun. And he leaves the girls to it, goes sloping off. Back to change Lily's nappies or whatever he's up to, and there he skulks off. And Meghan says, thanks, my love. Thanks, my love. And Serena speaks of her praise, her love for Meghan. She says, I love you. I believe in you. We've been friends for so long. And it's a big, big love fest that can't be denied. But we can deny whether or not it's phony or real. It is a display. It is I don't want to encourage you to listen to it because I don't particularly want her getting the views, but who cares? Who cares at this point? It is a real display throughout the whole thing about how cozy they are. And you can see that Meghan's really relishing it. She's like, no, it's been so long. It's so long since we caught up. And no. And she throws all these little private asides in there, but we'll speak about in a moment. But it's utterly vulgar. It's utterly vulgar. She really wants to hammer it home that they're just such good buddies. And I get the feeling this is going to be a running theme. She'll be doing it with Mariah next week. She wants everybody to know how tight they are. Don't you realise, you dumb girl, the coolest thing you ever did was have an association with Her Majesty when you were seen out on the train with her and she gifted you little things in the train carriage and you're out and about having a giggle. You can't get cooler than that, my dear. You cannot. That's a money can't buy ticket. But you thought it was so uncool because you're so fucking uncultured. You couldn't wait to swim over the pond and, you know, start bragging about, oh, I know the tennis stars, you know, I know pop singers, this, that and the third. These ephemeral characters that come and go when you had a ticket to royalty. Beggars belief. Meghan tells Serena, she says, you experience behind closed doors the pain I'm going through, and vice versa. Oh, and then, almost as if she's being bashful about that comparison, she then tries to relate it to the common woman out there, you know. She tries to relate it and says, you know, it's just like all the women out there, you know, they're going through it in smaller ways, you know, not on the world stage, but, you know, it's mirrored in their pain. They're experiencing all this stuff behind closed doors. And then they talk about the differences in the way that girls and boys grow up, men and women, the difference in attitudes. Meghan says that girls that raise their hand in class are called bossy. Who by? Who's calling them bossy? This is the hypocrisy of the whole thing, you know. It's only Meghan and the likes of Meghan who seem to have this victim complex that's permanently there, that wants to draw out these stories. When has she ever raised a hand and been called bossy? I would bet my bottom dollar never. I would also bet my bottom dollar that she's never witnessed it anywhere else, ever. Be that in school, one of their privileged schools that was so highly funded, where everybody got on from all kinds of diverse backgrounds and loved each other. Whether it was there, or anywhere else. Now, perhaps she was called bossy in her working life later on. But don't make that into a sexist problem, Meghan. Maybe it's because you were the problem at Kensington Palace. She always had somebody in her sights. Remember what they said? Remember what they said? Remember what Jason said, my dear? So if you've been called bossy, it doesn't mean that you're being called bossy, Meghan, because you're a woman. Maybe. Just maybe. It's because you're bossy. Do you think that compliments are the only valid commentaries? She's lovely. She's beautiful. She's charming. Yes, yes, yes. She's bossy. Sexist! No, my dear, that's not how the world works. She goes on to mention that article, Straight Outta Compton, which is the one that everyone points at as having racist undertones, and I'll leave you to decide whether or not that article was truly racist or not, or if it was just tabloid commentary. I know what I think. But I haven't read it for some time, to be fair. But anyway, she mentions that because Serena Williams hails from Compton. And she says, oh, when I saw that headline, I thought, who are they talking about, Serena? Yeah, right, of course you did. Of course you did, Meghan. But anything to compare the two. She says, what was it, Serena? What was it about our 11-year-old selves that made us so different, that made us want to stand up? And that we were so ambitious. What was it about us? Not everybody else, but about us. She mentions how fearless she was as a child, and she suggests that fearlessness has dissipated over the years. Not so much now, but when I was a child, I was fearless. That's what it was. And Serena quickly corrects her and says, Meghan, you are fearless. She says, never mind as a child, you are fearless now. And I realised quickly that Meghan was just playing when she suggested that she didn't have any fear, because as it's been suggested before, she does have that ruthless streak, which I do get hints of, that is entirely fearless, and that she relishes it all. And throughout the whole thing, you pick up on bits of her energy, because she's got, I quite like her speaking voice objectively, but it has this energy running through it, which is slightly frantic, slightly, I don't know, just hints of chaos beneath the surface, a restless sort of energy, I've written, a restlessness. And as it goes on, I can imagine what it is like to be with this woman who is, when Jason Knauf said that she's always got to have someone in her sight, that is the energy that I pick up for her. She's always on it. Then she goes on to make an absurd example of John McEnroe. She uses John McEnroe to make a point. She uses recordings of him back in the day with his famous expression towards the umpire. You can't be serious, man! And he's blowing up at the umpire or the referee or whatever it was. Blowing up at him, really get into it, angry, blah, blah, blah. She uses this example to illustrate that men's reactions in tennis didn't receive such a visceral reaction, suggesting that when Serena Williams had blow-ups, this sort of thing, she was unfairly lobbied by the press, apparently. I don't even know about all these stories, so perhaps she's got a fair point about the way that Serena Williams was viewed in the early days, but I don't know Serena's story, so I can't comment on that, so to be fair. But what I will say is that it was utterly useless using this example of John McEnroe, because he was never praised for that. He was never praised for his outbursts. But I first became aware of it because of parodies of that moment that came to the fore in popular culture, references here, although my dad would say it occasionally during a game of squash. You can't be serious, man. And you could hear during the clip that was played boos from the crowd. They were booing him and his lack of sporting prowess. Well, to be fair, maybe they were booing the umpire. Some of you fruities will know the story better than me, so maybe I shouldn't speak on that. But it did seem a very strange comparison to make. using this John McEnroe example. And I sensed that Serena wasn't comfortable with it either, because she didn't outright agree. First, if you listen to it, she didn't outright agree that that comparison had anything to do with what they were talking about at all. But then the curious thing happened, my dear. The curious thing happened. After a few moments, it almost felt like she was being nudged along by this restless energy of Meghan's. And it seemed like Meghan was coaxing Serena into admitting that there is a double standard between men and women tennis players on this instance. And after her initial reluctance to go along with what Meghan was saying, she did sort of agree. She did end up agreeing with Meghan. And I found it revelatory to hear this sort of subliminal coaxing and coaching under the lines. And it really made it so apparent to me how someone who's vulnerable and weak, mentioning no names, Harry Sussex, my fans ran the wrong way, Harry Sussex, you know, is just food for the piranha. Food for the piranha. It is a total insight into how she has gotten into his head, my dear, because she is at it with this energy of hers, this frantic, restless energy. She is at it 24/7, like a machine, with a radar, looking out for these instances of unfairness. Just like the nuns at the Immaculate Heart who wanted to toss away their habits. Well, she's got a bad habit, and that's a bad habit of trying to find fault in absolutely everything and rejoicing when she does, so that she can try and elevate her fabulous superiority and display it to the rest of the world. Because she's such a philanthropist. But actually, after that, Serena then admitted, much to Meghan's chagrin, that her behaviour was bad, and Serena says that she had been totally at fault, which is something that Meghan could never do. This is why I came away with quite a fondness for Serena. I thought she sounded like a really nice gal, actually. She's someone that I get along very well with. Whereas Meghan, you could never imagine her admitting fault at certain things in a major way, without a caveat, could you? You couldn't. She's trained herself too much to be total sunshine, total positivity, her version of positivity, you know, which is, of course, the polar opposite, it's negativity, but you know what I mean. And all through this, the production of it, the start of it, as I hinted, is very much wanting the listeners, her little chums, her little sunbeams out there. She's definitely princess on the throne, you know, she's definitely queen of this castle, and you know, she's queen of, you know, the Soho House group, because she thinks they're so elite and so top of the pile. She's the queen of that pile. And she's like, come in, you can join us, it's fine. You know, Serena and I are besties, but we would love to see you, okay? You are more than welcome to come in. Just for a moment, we can't stay that long with you, but do come in and pour yourself a cup of tea, or we'll have a nice old English cup of tea, okay? You are more than welcome to come here. She wants you to feel that you are their bestie too. Just for 5 minutes. Just for 5 minutes, because unfortunately our worlds don't collide. Our worlds don't meet. But come in. And all the little fangirls out there, the Meghan Markle fangirls. Oh, we can come in. We can come in and have a cup of tea with Princess Meghan and Serena. They love us. They're our friends. No, they're not. They don't give a shit about you twats. You losers. And this led on to the next moment, the big reveal. Because they had to get a headline out of this, didn't they? And I haven't even looked at the press yet, but I know what I might put in my thumbnail or the title of this video. Archie nearly burned to death. Baby Archie nearly. I haven't had a time to look since this podcast was published. What's the betting that that's going to be the headline? The royal prince nearly burned to death. The Queen's great-grandson nearly burned to death. Because this is Meghan's trump card for the show. Of course, a royal trump card. Oh, and she says, Serena, oh my God, I can't believe, have I never mentioned this to you before? Oh my God, have I never talked to you about this before? Serena's like, no. I wonder why you didn't tell her about it, Meghan. You're so close, you're so tight, you have all these cozy coffee mornings, these mum chats. Why wasn't it mentioned? By the hairs of my chinny chin chin. Not only does the girl have the Pinocchio nose, but now she has the Billy Connolly chin. Why didn't you mention it, Meghan? Because you wanted to monetize the story? Because you wanted to wait for the moment to reveal it? And Spotify need to get their pound of flesh out of you, don't they? For all these trillions and billions that you claim they paid. So you hauled it out for the show. How cheap. And now I will tell you the story if you haven't heard. Serena begins, you see, by telling the story of how her daughter, the baby daughter, fell, I think she said, from a high chair while Serena's back was turned, and she broke her wrist. The baby broke her wrist. And she is still plagued with guilt about this to this day. But that night, she felt so guilty, she spent the whole night with her baby daughter, or one of the following night. Yes, it was the same night. And she only got half an hour's sleep that night. And the thing is, the next day, Serena was due to play in a Grand Slam, I think they said, one of these fancy matches. A Grand Slam. It was really important. She said, how on earth am I going to do this on half an hour's sleep? But, I love my daughter. I would leave in the middle of a Grand Slam match for my daughter. And she said she went on to play. I think she won this match with flying colours, and nobody knew that she ever had half an hour's sleep. And immediately Meghan is in there, because this is all prearranged, the script. It's lots of it's very scripted. The conversation comes across pretty natural, but, they have their bullet points of what they're going to cover, quite obviously, and lots of the inserts have been scripted. So Meghan then spins it around to tell her... Oh, my phone keeps going. Meghan then spins it around to tell her tale. And she says, and yet still, Serena, you show up and do this without people knowing what's happened behind the scenes. And I think what is so key, she says, I'm going to tell you what is so key. It's just so key because, I'm Rachel Zane, and I'm going to slap her up, slap her tight, and slap them all over again. She's Rachel Zane, and I'm going to sit down in this board meeting, my dears, and I'm going to just, I'm going to wear my tuxedo with the flared pants, and I'm just going to tell you, and you. Do you know what I think is really key? Keepers. Do you know what I think's really key? For us as women is recognizing what people don't see. Just like when we went on tour to South Africa, meaning she and Hasbo. It was just like when we went on tour to South Africa, Serena. It was just like that, because Archie, she says, was 4.5 months old. They landed at the airport. They dropped him off. They went out to an engagement where, and then she had to do her speech standing on a tree stump. Isn't that one of her famous speeches? She stood on the tree stump and broadcast to the poor little orphans or whoever it was. And then when they got in the car afterwards, she said, her staff said to her, there's been a fire at the residence in the baby's room. Ah, shock horror. Now, later on, when I've heard the rest of this story, I know full well that that would not have been the first words out of their mouth at all, because little baby Archie was obviously perfectly safe and alive. They would have said to her, now listen, there was a bit of an incident, but Archie's perfectly fine. He's unharmed. There was a fire. But Meghan's version of events is that the first thing that they said, there's been a fire at the residence in baby's room. Shock horror. And that's when she said to Serena, I can't believe we haven't talked about this. And Serena says, no, I don't remember you mentioning it. We raced back in the car, and our amazing nanny, Lauren, who we had in Canada, she was in floods of tears. Our amazing nanny from Zimbabwe. She had just put Archie down for his nap, but she decided At the last moment, she decided to get a snack from downstairs. But thank the Lord, because Fantastic Lauren was from Zimbabwe, and what is it she called those things that they put babies in on the back? Oh, I didn't write it down. Some kind of cloth. Oh yeah, a mud cloth. She would always tie him on her back with her mud cloth because she's from Zimbabwe. So at the last moment, she was inspired and found inspiration before she went downstairs to gobble and have a midnight feast with all the food in the kitchen when she should have been working. She slung baby Archie over her back into the mud cloth and chugged off down the stairs. And if she hadn't have done that, guess what? The heater caught on fire in Archie's bedroom. Went up in flames. The staff smelled the smoke. There was no alarm. There was no alarm in the room either. So poor baby Archie would have been ashes to ashes, dust to dust, if the fantastic Zimbabwean nanny hadn't slung her into the mud cloth. And oh bum, where was I? He was supposed to be sleeping in there. Everyone's in tears, she says. Everyone's shaken. This is sometime after the room went up in flames, and that baby Archie's absolutely fine. I mean, thank God. Thank God the boy's fine. It sounds like a close shave, but I'd be interested to know what the actual truth was. But she said, everyone's in tears. Everyone's shaken. And what did we have to do? Go out and do another official engagement. I said, this doesn't make any sense. Can you just tell people what happened? I presume she said this to Harry, but everyone was so cruel they made her go and do the engagement. Your baby was fine. Your baby was fine. It was over. The panic was over. It was dealt with. A tragedy was averted. A tragedy was avoided. Why do you need to miss the next official engagement? Just to sit with Archie and go, we really cherish you, we love you. If you trust your precious nanny, then I'm sure she won't be marching off to the kitchen for midnight feast again, or whatever she was doing, without baby Archie, Just as then, she brought the Ben with her, so he was perfectly fine. Anyway, she really hams it up. She really hams it up. You can tell from the way that Harry is and the way that he is so willing to talk and gossip with strangers about his pains and how hard done by it. They were just a match made in hell, weren't they? A match made in hell, because he gets the buzz of going to her and feeding her with information. She goes, oh my God, that's terrible, Harry. They said that about you. They said this. That is so cruel. That is so racist. But it's because you've got a black wife. It's because you're ginger. It's because of this, that, and the fourth. Just a match made in hell as far as I'm concerned. And she tries to excuse herself for turning the story into one about her by wittering on about understanding. It's all about understanding the human moments behind the scenes that other people might not have any awareness of, and to give each other a break. Well, yeah, I mean, when a normal general member of the public trots out to work every day, you don't know everything that's going on in family life or in one's personal life, or when you're having a meeting with the boss, you don't tell them what was going on with Flossie down the road or Aunt Glenda. Do the public have to be privy to absolutely everything? But that certainly seemed to be the big splash of the piece, the big bombshell of the piece. One splash that she wasn't allowed to reveal herself was the fact that Serena retired from the world of tennis, didn't she? Apparently, I didn't know this because I don't care about tennis, but she said, the world now knows the news that Serena is stepping down from pro tennis. And then she says, she pops in with an afterthought after recording to say, during recording, I knew about Serena's plans, but Serena and I couldn't openly talk about it in this kind of forum. She really wants you to know. She really wants you to know that she was privy to the top secret info. She was the only other person in the world that knew that Serena was retiring from tennis. She had to cosset that information and protect it from the commoners. She's just so chummy with Serena. She's my friend, Meghan says. She's my friend, and I wasn't gonna betray that trust. You gotta hear it for yourself. It's so over the top. How could she keep a straight face? She's my friend, and I wasn't gonna betray that trust. Who are you talking to? Well, we know who you're talking to. Imbeciles, mainly. So, fair point. Fair play to you, girl. You know, fair play to the girl. Well, I was going to say she knows what she's doing, but we see her popularity ratings plummeting, so who knows? Maybe she's too clever for her own good in the end. And that's the kind of thing that these podcasts will bring to light and show. But now that we can reveal this, I know that I needed to call Serena up and record some more of this. Because even though we talk all the time, you guys needed to hear this too. Yeah, you guys needed to hear this too. The deeper story behind the scenes. You know, I'm going to let you in. You can join the Williams Markle Club, the Markle Williams Club, and we'll let you in. You know. So unnecessary, so cringe. Then again, she has to prove her credentials. So, Serena, she says, you ended up texting me the other day. Yeah, you texted me, didn't you, buddy? You texted me. And I was like, it's out. The world knows your secret. She gets so stupid and fangirly about it. I mean, Serena Williams is retiring from tennis. Is this mind-blowing news in America? She's 40 years old. Don't they usually retire earlier than that in tennis? I don't know. But, I mean, I assume she was a coach by now anyway, or some sort of thing, you know. And these stars can go on to have absolutely fabulous lives, which they would talk about, but it's out of the bag. That's supposed to be headline news. So what? By the way, Serena refers to Harry as well as H, so that seems to be the pseudonym of the day, H, and she seems to actually have a softer spot for Harry, I felt. They've been having loads of these intense chats that Harry loves to have. Says they've been a great support to her. She seems to seek out Harry's counsel, and she seemed to have sorted out over this affair with regards to retiring from tennis. I don't know how long she could have gone on for if she didn't retire this year, but no wonder she's quitting if she took Harry's counsel, because that's what he likes to do, doesn't he? You know, I was reading just today about how, well, the whole world's in trouble at the moment, isn't it, my dears, post-pandemic, and the United Kingdom is in big trouble as well as the war going on and everything that went on during the pandemic. The cost of living crisis we're experiencing here, I don't know how it's affecting other countries at the moment, with the knock-on effect from the pandemic and from gas supplies, you know, everything to do with the war as well. It's really devastating for many people in the kingdom at the moment, because energy bills, for example, are going through the roof. I read this week that they're going to be capped somewhere around £6,500, don't quote me, per year. £6,500 for the average household to have energy supplied to their house. I'm just guessing, but I think normally it would be between £2,000 and £3,000, even less in some circumstances. But it's gone up exponentially, might go up even more, but £6,500 it's going to be. So I'm pointing to this because, as we know, earlier in the year, or was it last year, Harry was advising people, you know, quit your job, life's too short. That seemed to be the general messaging that was reported in the press anyway. Life's too short, quit your job, go and do something fun. Well, all these people that went out, not just on his behest, but people have been doing this, been quitting. Well, they're going to be in more trouble than they ever thought they're going to find themselves in, because they won't be able to afford even the most basic necessities of life if they've quit their job for something less better paid but more fulfilling. The practicalities of life are going to be kicking in this winter, very, very soon if they haven't already. And people are going to be turning to commentators such as Harry, and I'm sure many more, who've been advising this new style of living. You know, it sounds all very good, doesn't it? Quit your job, go have fun, go play, find something fulfilling. Well, when you've got to pay for bread and butter and a warm radiator on a January morning. Doesn't seem quite the smartest move in the world, does it? But that's their style, isn't it? Reimagine your future. Make your move. It's just all so Harkles. Meghan says it takes a lot of courage to stop something than to keep going sometimes. And that was obviously, in my mind, referencing what happened with the palace. It takes a lot of courage to stop something, with emphasis on stop, than to keep going sometimes. Well, have you ever thought, Meghan, that sometimes the reverse is true? Would that ever enter your mind? Because I don't doubt what you say, that sometimes it does take courage to stop. Of course that's true, but I just don't think it would ever enter your mind to do a little Libran dance and weigh up the possibility that perhaps it would also take courage to see something through, especially when you've taken the mantle of something so huge, such as Ambassador to the Commonwealth and wife to a duke, sweetheart of a nation for some time. Did it not occur to you that sometimes the reverse is true, and that sometimes stopping is not the courageous move? That stopping and aborting a regal process is nothing but shameful? No, of course it didn't cross your mind, because you invent your own little scenario, don't you, my dear? Okay, final page of notes. Are you still with me? She mentioned at one point that her, I don't know if this was common knowledge before, but her license plate holder in the old car that she used to go on about, was it a Fiat or something beginning with N? Apparently the license plate holder used to say, "Classy girl." No comment. Now, this last section was a lot about control. It exposed a lot about how she controls. And she says it. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. Who said that? Oprah or Maya, one of her heroes. But she talks a lot about her own forms of operation, how she controls the narrative, because she's still talking with Serena and about Serena's retirement. I think she said it was announced in Vogue. Oh, because you're just such good chums with Anna, aren't you? They go on about Anna Winter and you know how cozy and close they all are. She relishes it. She relishes all of that. She says, "Serena, I love how you shared this news. You could control this story and how it landed. You could control and choose how you relayed it to all your supporters and fans." She's talking about herself, you get this. Serena probably doesn't really care. She probably doesn't really care about controlling the narrative in such a way. She just seems a bit more chill than Meghan. This is Meghan talking about herself. And then there was a little segment where she's like going on about how proud she is. I can't remember what it was, but these fake tears, she starts blubbing. Clears up very quickly. They're not real. Crocodile tears. Maybe that's how Archie learnt the word crocodile at such a young age. Crocodile tears! No, Archie, they're real. Look, they're real. She's only crying because she's empathizing, if that's the right word. She's capable of empathy. She's putting herself in Serena's position, you know, thinking about her. That's the only reason why she's fake crying. And then she says, she reveals her name for Serena, or what is it she said? Serena. I can't remember how she pronounced it, but instead of Serena, she said, "You're my Serena. My little mermaid. Serena, my little mermaid." And you can just imagine that when she drummed this up, because Serena had heard this nickname before for her. She's, "Oh yes, I'm your Serena." You can tell that Meghan would have been like, you know, my name, Meghan. Forget Rachel. Meghan comes from the valleys of Wales. Before the Prince of Wales, there was Meghan, which meant pearl. So that is what's really in my heart, even though it was dropped. The pearl was dropped, but it will always be in my heart because that's the true meaning of my name. And the true meaning of your name, Serena, is mermaid. The mermaid and the pearl. The fishy one and the precious jewel. And then she says, and by the way, I can't remember how she dropped this into the conversation, but she said, and I am afraid of heights too. No one knows, but I'm afraid of heights. Because she wants to segue into saying, it's about perception and reality, she says. She says she's afraid of heights too, and she says, perception and reality, they're just never really the same thing. Isn't it funny how she tells us who she is? How she tells us about controlling the narrative. In the same breath as telling us the difference between perception and reality. They're just never really the same thing. You said it, Meghan Markle. You said it. You showed us that everything we've ever heard from you, I don't think you're capable of doing it another way, is nothing more than perception through the lens of your own control. It ain't reality. It ain't reality. That's what we saw in Oprah Winfrey. And Harry's in the same boat, especially with you in his ear 24/7, putting your spin on narratives, controlling the narratives, controlling the story, controlling where it lands, controlling the way that you choose to relay it to all your supporters and fans. We see you. We see you. Get in the sea. Get in the sea, Pearl. We see you. Very enlightening. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. And I promise you, dears, you know me, I did come to this with an open mind, and I didn't expect to be quite so bowled over by the temerity of the girl, quite so bowled over by the phony character that she has. Because I, as you know, I do like to show light and shade. And normally by this time I would be saying to you, but on the flip side, you know, to show this, you know, we must bear this in mind, and let's be fair on the girl, you know, she could have meant this, but the whole thing was a relentless sort of Sweet Valley High girls club who think that they're cool. Not Serena, but Meghan. It was like, this is my cool girls club. Who needs the fusty old royal family in England? You know, the way that they talk about us, and that ambition's a bad world, a bad word. No, you'll never be cool, Markle. I don't care what cover you've graced. I don't care if you're on Vogue magazine. That just means that Vogue ain't cool anymore, my loves. No, you'll never be cool. Because you'll never impress the likes of me, my dear. You'll never impress the likes of me, and you'll never impress the likes of the Queen. And I don't care who you think are the decision makers as to what's in and what's out, and what's cool and what's not, and what's true and what's real, and what's fiction and what's fantasy, my dear. I don't care. I don't care what you think, or what you do. So you're the Duchess of Sussex. That don't impress me much. And it doesn't impress my fruities either, does it, my dears? Thank you for joining me, and if you'd like to show your appreciation, my tip jar is in the description box below. Or you can leave me a nice juicy comment or question, or just blow me a kiss, my dear. Ta-ra for now, and I'll catch up with you soon. Slap a lot, slap a tight, and slap them all over again.